Ladies and gentlemen, teeth back in.
Yes, Grant.
Kevin needs is a writer.
And starting after that gibberish, we will now move to the panel. In the far corner, in the red waistcoat, David is now one of us, Wake. In the middle, the silver-haired vixen of books, Beth Webb. And closest to me, weighing 150 pounds, the resident heavyweight title holder.
You can double that if you want.
Something nice.
We'll hold him down.
Mark, the writer, Andy. Let battle commence.
All right, this really is a writers' panel as an opportunity for you people to ask us questions. Are there any budding writers in the room? Hands up, please.
Kind of.
Oh, come on.
Kind of. Well, what was it? I did write a ghost story, didn't I, about one of your posts?
Yeah. Anybody writing something they want to publish? Anybody actually publish?
Yeah. Well, if you can't if you can't
Fatties can. So I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves, starting. Should we do it in alphabetical order? Oh, no, that's ridiculous.
Well, BBC speak in alphabetical order.
Yeah, Andy, you start. We'll go that way.
Yes, sorry. I'm Andy Lane, or Andrew Lane, depending on which of my books you happen to pick up. I've been coming to Armadacon for 23 years now with some gaps, so I'm kind of more an audience member than a panel member most of the time. I've been a professional writer for coming on to 40 years now. I've professionally published 42 books, of which about 33 are fiction and 9 are non-fiction. I'm currently working on a contract with a German publisher, Ravensburger, for 4 books for 7 to 12-year-olds. So I've basically covered all the genres. I've done Doctor Who, I've done Torchwood, I've ghostwritten some mystery novels. What's wrong with Torchwood?
I like Torchwood.
You said I've covered all the genres,
All the
Doctor
genres.
Who and Torchwood.
I was moving on. I've ghostwritten 3 crime novels for somebody else. I've got a series of books for young adults called The Young Sherlock Holmes, which runs to about 8 books. And yeah, that's probably about it.
About it. Good. That's more than the rest of us put together.
Oh, sorry, also, sorry, if I can just interrupt. Just interrupting myself, that's all. Probably worth saying, as well as writing, I had a career in the civil service for 27 years. Because I made a choice very early on. I thought it's difficult to get into writing, and when you're a new writer, you don't earn very much. So I actually wanted a job that paid the bills while I developed the writing, and then I took out of retirement 10 years ago, and I'm now full-time writing.
I can see a number of places where I've made mistakes. And you're traditionally published with an
Absolutely,
agent.
yes. I have an agent. I've worked with Macmillan and Bonnier and Ravensburger in Germany, and Box Tree, who are non-fiction. I do have 2 self-published books which are up on Amazon. They're not there because I particularly want to make any money from them. It's because I needed to collect together a load of short stories that I'd done before they got lost in the mists of time. So I've got 2 Amazon Kindle books.
One of those is the one I bought.
Yeah.
I was going to ask...
Hang on, we need to go on to... Can we come back to you?
Yeah.
Beth.
Right, I'm Beth Webb, and I have been a radio broadcaster working for independent radio as well as Beeb. I've been a newspaper journalist, and I have spent many years helping develop a charity called Books Beyond Words, which produces wordless books for adults and now children with learning disabilities, mostly for adults, communicating with sort of gesture and colour, mime essentially. So communicating with people with learning disabilities, very, very difficult life situations. I helped set that up, so I've done about 30 odd books for them. I've been traditionally published with Macmillan, several small publishers, can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I've had quite a lot of books traditionally published, including Macmillan. And because of problems with agents and Macmillan, I now don't have an agent, and I'm going to go back from this conference and continue my search to find another one. But I have also self-published, and I've helped other people self-publish their books. So I've got about 45 books in total if you add them all together.
I've barely started.
Never mind, David.
I'm David Wake. I've just published my 13th novel. I've been coming to Armadacon for far too long, but I'm going to carry on doing so. I also represent an organisation called New Street Authors, which is a collective of independently published authors. We were based in Birmingham, we've got members in Edinburgh, Bristol, all over the place. And I co-wrote publishing, which is why and how you should independently publish. So clearly I'm going to try and suck these people up to my side of the dark side, if you like, if I can. So that's my background, and that's all of our backgrounds. So we either drivel on, or we're driven by questions. So when you've got any questions? Something here?
Oh, I did have one. Sorry, it was Andy who sort of triggered it a little bit. Have any of you actually been to the point that you've not got anywhere and you think you've got that book that you're boiling the shoe leather at home to be eating, you know?
Well, it's a poverty of writers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I had a day job and thought, I don't like this, I would rather be a poor writer. And I've managed that transition, and now I'm very much a poor writer.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it is better than having a day job, but it would be better if I was a slightly better paid writer. That's probably the summary.
But David, you've got your acting to fall back on.
Yes, thank goodness I kept that. So, yeah.
I started getting books published pretty quickly, fortunately through a route that I don't think anybody could do these days, and that's when Virgin Books got the license to do Doctor Who spin-offs in the period when Doctor Who was being shown on television. And they made what I didn't realise at the time, but I've since realised was quite a courageous decision. Rather than get established writers and teach them about Doctor Who, they actually recruited Doctor Who fans and taught us how to write. So I don't think that kind of route would work for anybody else.
Why didn't they find me?
I don't know, because you hide behind something.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Probably too young, Dave.
In Birmingham.
But it's fair to say that there is a book I've wanted to write for about 20 years now. Because I've always been a big fan of an American writer called Tim Powers, who generally takes a year in history and looks at all the bizarre things that happened and then works out a plot that connects them all together, which is absolutely genius. And for a book that I wrote a while back, I did a lot of reading around the Elizabethan era and things that happened. So I want to write a massive fantasy book with Walter Raleigh and Queen Elizabeth I and Shakespeare and Galileo. But I've never quite found a way to approach it yet.
Finding a common thread.
Yes.
I think I know most of the things that you've written on the television thing, but you mentioned there that you had done non-fiction.
Yes.
Now, I've never seen anything of yours. Do you want to tell us just there?
Oh, okay. A lot of them are...
We couldn't hear the question.
Sorry,
Sorry.
it's about the non-fiction that I'd done, because it's all kind of vanished. A lot of it was, again, TV and film tie-ins, so I did 3 books with Hardman animations about Wallace and Gromit and Creature Comforts. And in fact, we're negotiating a 4th one at the moment, which would be nice. I did a book about the Austin Powers movies,
Oh, yeah.
which was a disaster. because it was just when they were bringing the third Austin Powers movie out. So I had the first two on video, and they sent me the script for the third one. So I wrote the book, which was basically imagining that the whole world of Austin Powers was real, describing all the bits of it. It was kind of the world of Austin Powers. But what they didn't do was give me the last page of the script, which is where it's revealed that Austin Powers and Dr. Evil are actually brothers. So I wrote the entire book without knowing that, which is a little bit of a kick in the face. And I'm an American writer I used to know, Max Adrian Collins. He wrote the original graphic novel of The Road to Perdition, which was then a movie with Tom Hanks. And he was given a chance to novelise the movie, which he did. And he added a whole lot of backstory for all the characters, because obviously it was his story. And the publisher said, no, take all of that out, because it's not in the movie. And he said, but they're my characters, it's my script. No, take it all out. He also did the novelisation of the Dick Tracy movie with Warren Beatty as Dick Tracy. But he wasn't allowed to reveal the identity of the mystery murderer, because the film company didn't want the surprise to be ruined. So how do you write a mystery novel where you don't reveal the identity of the murderer? It's stupid. It's publishers for you.
That's one of the things when you independently publish is that publishers don't turn around to you. You haven't got any publishers that turn around and say, take this out or do it like this.
But on the other hand, if you're independently published, you do make mistakes that even if it's been read and proofread, you've actually left a howler in.
Yes.
But that's true of traditionally published books.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
It is more now.
Traditionally published books, I write the book, my agent might read it or might not. The editor at the publisher will read it, the copy editor at the publisher will read it. So it's gone through about 4 sets of eyes apart from mine before it gets published. So the chances are that most of the mistakes have been taken out. But also the examples of bad writing, the cliches that I might have dropped in. But there's a lot of self-published writers, obviously none of whom are here, but a lot of self-published writers who will just write the book and upload it to Amazon Kindle or whichever platform they're using. Now, I know you guys are probably very strict about having beta readers and getting some editors and so on. Some writers don't do that. And so if you do a search on Amazon for, which I do every now and then, for 99p books on Kindle, which is great because sometimes the algorithm on Kindle will sometimes arbitrarily reduce a Star Trek or a Star Wars book or a science fiction novel to 99p for 2 or 3 days. So I do a scan every now and then so I can collect all these cheap books. But you'll find oceans of books on there for 99p, a series of 12 books which somebody has written, which they're selling for 99p, but you know perfectly well they haven't had them checked or scanned or anything.
I would find 3 sets of eyes you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, well, I suppose the barest minimum, but I would want more people than that to check it through.
Yes.
Certainly.
I used to be, for a number of years, I was in a writers group, and there were I think 7 of us, and we would all submit chapters or short stories every month. And that was a wonderful thing with people looking at what you were doing and giving you feedback on it so you could change it. Except that after a while, I think 4 or 5 of us actually became published writers. And so what you get in the end is writers telling you about what they would do if they were writing your stuff, rather than giving you advice.
But there is, of course, literary
No, it's fine.
literary consultancies, I was just going to say.
Yes, I mean, as an independent publisher, you're in charge of your own publishing house, so you can hire editors.
Yeah.
People.
Through places like Cornerstones and the literary consultancies.
I was just going to say, and Andy will probably relate to this, it's quite interesting. As a non-fiction writer, I've had 5 books published with 3 different publishers, and only one of my 5 books, to the best of my knowledge, has ever been fact-checked.
Wow.
The other 4 have gone through proof and gone through copy.
Yeah.
They've never gone through a fact-checking process. I could have written it, I probably did write any old crap. But only one of them, and that was because it was for an academic press and it went through peer review. But the ones that didn't go through that process, I don't know whether it's the same with yours, they were never really fact-checked.
The ones I've done have mostly been in association with a film company or a TV company or art and animation. So they've gone through and actually checked all the facts, which is great. I now worry that people are going to be quoting your books as verbatim facts in the future, and you'll infiltrate reality with
I might well do, you never know.
I think one of the problems is publishers have got less money, and I'm dyslexic, not badly, but I really do struggle to get every word right, because sometimes the computer auto-corrects onto a homophone,
Oh, yes.
and I haven't noticed. I mean, it's not set to auto-correct, but sometimes it slips through. And I think publishers now often think, oh, well, you've got spell check. You know, so we needn't bother with a copy editor or, you know, somebody to do this, that or the other. And you get the most awful howlers in traditionally published books because they're trying to cut costs.
That's why they make you do all your marketing.
Well, I was just about to say that. That thing about publishers cutting costs and cutting back on what they do is very evident not only in the copy editing process, but also in the publicity side. They expect you as a writer to have 3,000 followers on Facebook and Twitter, as if that will translate into book sales. And I've heard horror stories from new writers who've approached not only publishers but agents, and the agent has said, "Oh, I like your book. What's your publicity strategy?" Or, well, no, it's not. That's not in our skill set. That's not what we should be doing.
If you have to do your own publicity campaign, you might as well do it for yourself. And instead of getting 12.5% of the book costs, you get 70%.
But set against presumably a reduced number of sales.
Yes, but if you're doing your own publicity,
You just keep
Then
the
you-
profit.
and if your publicity campaign gets 500 sales, no, if your publicity campaign gets 10 sales, and you work for a traditional publisher and get 10 sales, 70% of 10 is better than 12.5%.
The difference is in the distribution.
Well, yes, I mean, it's clearly, we've got, independent publishers got no chance to get into a bookshop, just none at all. I mean, I know one or two people who've managed to get into Waterstones or an independent bookshop, but it just doesn't work. But then, most people don't buy Waterstones, they buy online. 80% of the world's book sales goes through Amazon.
Shocking.
I mean, you can say it's the evil empire, but give me the uniform. I've joined the evil empire. It's the only way to sell. The person with knitting needles might stab us if we don't get into answer the question.
No, that because that is part of my question. You mentioned self-publishing on Amazon Kindle. Is that why I personally don't like Amazon, evil empire or not evil empire? I just don't like them. And I don't think they are necessarily good for business, but obviously they are easier, better, more accessible, pay you better, I don't know. Why publish with Amazon?
In my limited experience, it's because a lot of people have Kindles or they've got the Kindle software on their tablets. And so that the marketplace is there on Amazon, they can just download the stuff straight away.
And
You
if
could,
sorry, because I don't even have a Kindle yet.
no,
So if you, if it's not published by Amazon, can you not download it onto Kindle?
You can
Yes,
download it
yes.
onto your computer or phone using different software.
you can download things onto your Kindle from other sites. There was a site called Smashwords, and then there's Draft to Digital. They've actually combined, so I'm still up there as to what they do precisely. What happened was about the same time the Kindle came out. People think the independent revolution is due to the Kindle. It is not. It just happened at the same time. What Amazon did is it opened its bookshop. Anybody could stock on its shelves. So Galant's, Macmillan, whoever had to compete on the same level playing field as Watledge Books. I have Watledge Books. And I can just put things on Amazon. That's what's opened it out. That's why traditional publishers hated it, because their favoured situation went. Amazon sells 80% of the world's books. So you don't need to go anywhere else. Go on, sorry.
Plus, it's not just, you don't necessarily have to buy Kindle if you have a monthly, if you have the unlimited, Kindle Unlimited.
Amazon
Kindle.
Prime.
No, Kindle
Gives
Unlimited.
you Kindle.
Kindle Unlimited, you can borrow as many Kindle books, and every page turn of the Kindle book is money for the author. As far as I know,
Yes.
it's not as much as you buy the book,
It's pittance,
but
but
it's, you know, the more books you have, the more. And over that, a lot of people might start to read your book and say, oh, I like the author, what else did he write?
Does that mean I should set my Kindle to a larger font, so if I'm reading those books, I can
I think it's a percentage of the way through.
Sorry?
It's a percentage of the way through.
Okay.
But
Sorry, one question about that, because I really try to understand how it all works. So your percentage, is that depending on what they sell the book for, or?
Yes.
So
If people are buying it and you've set a price for it, you get 70% or something like that of the price. But if it's on rent online and kind of Kindle, the loan scheme, then I think it is a page percentage of what.
It's not much, it's a several cents per page turn or something.
It's worth saying that Amazon have their own file format for books. It's the AZW format. So if you get a book in that format, you can't read it on any other system. But there are particular software that will convert it.
that's not quite right.
Yeah.
Amazon used to be Mobi files,
Yeah, they used to
but
be.
they've recently changed to EPUB files, which is the standard.
EPUB files are I stand that they also have the AZW. So if you've uploaded your book specifically for Kindle, that's the format it'll come out with.
There's a box to tick to say whether you want it to be
I haven't done it for a
digital
while.
rights management.
But there's a clever program called Calibre, which has nothing to do with me, and I don't make any money from it. So, but you can upload a book event, you can upload a PDF, and it'll convert that PDF to a file format that anything will, an EPUB format or a Mobi format.
I use Calibre to make my ebooks from HTML files.
Yes.
It's fantastic. It's software and it's free.
If you publish via Amazon KDP, you don't necessarily have to do an ebook. You can do a normal book, soft cover, hardcover, whatever you like.
But you can't do large format.
Not a soft cover, I think.
I tried to put this on Kindle and it wouldn't fit.
Maybe, yeah,
Because
maybe that
it's
you have to check the format and
illustrated.
adjust to that.
yeah.
So it couldn't be adjusted.
Yeah. Because I know somebody that published children's books, but it was only possible in hardcover and had it.
You've got to fit their format.
Yeah, but they offer several.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
School libraries. There are something like 30,000 odd schools in the UK, each of which has got a library. So if you're writing books that that age group, sort of year 7, year 8, year 9, will want to read, you're kind of dependent on the school librarian who has the power to decide what to buy for the library. So in my case, that's actually reasonably simple, because the school publisher will see the list from Macmillan or Bonnier or whoever else and say, okay, well, I have that book, that book, that book. I'm really interested to see how small publishers can get into school libraries. Have you tried?
One of our members did recently get his books into the school he grew up in, into their library. He used it for a massive amount of publicity shots of him in his library and in his book. But I don't know, he was contacted by word of mouth, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that whole area is quite difficult to see a way into, but there's a Young Adult Librarians Federation, I think, or Young Adult Librarians Conference, and that they have kind of internet groups where they recommend books to each other.
Right.
So there's a whole culture out there if you can find a way into it.
There used to be a magazine, I presume it's online now, called School Librarian. And if you can get reviewed on that, that does help. But I've no idea how to get into that. Usually schools only buy my books to the library if I've been to the school doing a presentation for a day or two.
I have the opposite experience that a lot of schools will buy my books, especially the young Sherlock Holmes books, because obviously there's a Sherlock Holmes literary connection there which the librarians can latch onto. And then the kids will read the first one, they want to read the second one, so the librarian will get the second one in. And then eventually I might get invited to go and talk to the school. And I'm signed up with a company called Authors Abroad. There's two, there's Authors Allowed and Authors Abroad, which all kind of act as agents for authors going around to schools. So they will, if a school wants you, the school will book you through the company, and then you go and you get paid for it, you get accommodation, you get, you get travel.
Please give me the details of that.
I will. There's a school in the extremes of Essex, which I've been to before, I'm going to go to again, where the librarian actually gets a copy of the first of the young Sherlock Holmes books for every kid in the year. And then he will do the English lessons using the book. And then I'm going up to see them in a couple of weeks' time. It's basically you go up through Essex and you kind of get to the marshlands at the far end of Essex, almost like the end of the world, and then you turn right and you go on a little bit. It's East Bergholt. But to actually go to a school where all of the kids in the year are reading your book and you're talking to them and they're talking to you, it's actually fantastic. It's a really, really good experience.
Last time,
30 sales a year. I'm well jealous.
You must get fantastic feedback from when they're asking questions. So you must get fantastic feedback to think, if I'm doing other books.
Yeah, it's what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Also, I end up signing a whole load of books, so you're usually given the name of the person you sign for, a little yellow sticky note, and I collect unusual names. So if I see one, I think I've never seen that before. I'm going to use that as a character. So yeah, it is very, very good.
And one thing, they are honest. That's one thing. They'll come through with the truth as they see it.
Yeah. I've read all 8 of your books. Oh, that's great. Which one do you like the most? The first one. Okay, moving on.
it doesn't always work though. Last time I went to a school where they said they were going to use one of my books as the reading subject for the term, and I was come in like that. I got there and I gave the talk because I was told the kids will have all been working on my book for the term, and the kids looked very blank. And at the end of the talk, the teacher said, "Sorry, we never actually got round to giving them your book." So always have a plan B if your publisher says, they will have read your book.
Yeah.
Always have 2 talks up your sleeve in case they haven't.
Yeah. Stand up routine and a bit of tap dancing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You've all worked in other media, so Beth mentioned you were a radio presenter and journalist, and I know Andy does Big Finish stuff and David does plays. Do you think working in other media, like voice media and performance and so on, makes you a better fiction writer? Does the different kind of media feed into each other?
I'd say they do, but I think doing anything as well as writing is very important. I've taught creative writing to teenagers for many years, and they say, do we go and do a creative writing degree? And I usually say don't, or if you do, have a creative writing module, because the number of kids that come out with a creative writing degree and think they're going to be published, and it doesn't work like that. And I think to do something else, whether it's in the media, or whether you're a teacher, whether you're a tap dancer, whatever it is, any life experience will inform you and make you a better writer. And I think if you start off being young and just writing like that, the books won't have any food in them.
Well, I think, sorry, can I? No, David?
All I was going to say, my co-author of the publishing book lectures in creative writing, and he says his main task is handling aspirations. Bring them down to earth.
It is the horrible truth of of writing, it's like being an artist or a sculptor or whatever. You don't have any right to be published or to be exhibited or anything. There is no guarantee that you will get published. Journalism, I found, because I used to do a lot of book reviews and film reviews, and I found journalism is a marvellous filter through which to get to your writing, because it teaches you the value of concision.
Yeah.
You know, if you're writing a 300-word book review, you've really got to put it into that, and that helps with the writing. New writers, I know a lot of people on Twitter, sorry, X, who are, they want to be writers and they've written like a full novel and they haven't made the breakthrough yet. And they put some of the stuff up on Twitter and I read it and it's just flowery and wordy and verbose. And the first big lesson you should learn as a writer is to cut it back all the time.
You also, in journalism, I believe, you get editors and sub-editors. They just take a pencil and go, right, cut that entire paragraph.
Yeah, or they cut from the bottom.
Yeah.
It's quite scary. I've done that to people. It's great fun.
But you learn a discipline from that, don't you?
Yes. No, after a while you learn not to put that in.
Yeah.
So they don't have to take it out.
And also, if you work in a different medium, you learn the strengths of that medium, therefore you learn the strengths and weaknesses of the one you're working with. So doing plays is very different from doing novels and prose. You can do things with plays that you can't do prose and vice versa, so you get a feel for the strengths of what you're doing.
Also, audio drama, and as you mentioned, the Big Finish audios, I've done I think 15 of those. That gets you thinking about the voice of the person. You imagine, you know, a character, an actor reading out a certain voice. And again, new writers, you can read the stuff, and if you took away the who said what, you know, so-and-so said, and just have the dialogue, sometimes it's difficult to tell who's talking. But if you've had the audio experience, you've got the tone of voice in your mind, and you can put that into the dialogue. I got a degree in physics, so I didn't, because you couldn't do creative writing when I was at university back in the 80s. You could only do English literature, which was really kind of breaking apart Shakespearean sonnets to see how they work, which is a bit like in biology taking apart a butterfly to see how it works. The butterfly does not come out of it well. So I decided not to do English lit, so I did physics, and that gave me the ability to think logically about structure. Especially I did a module on an early computer programming, Fortran 77 for anybody that doesn't need computer programming, and that actually really helps me when I'm plotting something. So I think that one of the really big questions with new writers, certainly on X, is, sorry, I should do X, is are you a structure plan writer or are you a seat of the pants writer? And there are strengths and weaknesses in both approaches, but for me, I like to have a plot, I like to have a structure, I like to know where I'm heading for.
What are you?
Structure.
Plotter.
Yeah, plotter.
Beth, what are you?
I work in both ways, seating pants and plotting. I play with ideas, and once I've got the play out and things have started to come alive, voices have come alive, I then plot.
Right.
What about you, David?
I'm a puzzler. It's the other way of doing it.
You're a puzzle?
Puzzler, yes. You write random stuff and then you try to stitch it all together.
Chaos spirit.
It's the least best way of doing it, Tony.
So one of my favourite authors, apart from Tim Powers, is Roger Zelazny. He's an American writer of the Amber series, absolutely marvellous. I think the first 7 books. He's dead now, but I met him at a convention years ago. He's a seat of the pants, he was a seat of the pants author. He would start writing and let the plot flow where it went, which works sometimes. The first 7 Amber books are absolutely glorious. When he did the second Amber series, they're terrible, because they just wander all over the place. And I know, I interviewed David Gemmell, a fantasy writer, British fantasy writer, some years ago. Again, he's dead. Beginning to worry. I interviewed him and asked him, and he said he wrote his first book. It was a siege on a castle book, you know, the evil orcs trying to get into the castle. And actually, he said it was a metaphor for when he had cancer. He was being treated, and so he imagined the orcs as being the cancer cells and the castle as being him, his body. And he said, depending on which way the diagnosis had gone, the treatment had gone, he would have either had the castle overrun or the humans inside defeating the orcs and surviving, which is an incredible story in its own right. But it was published, I can't remember, Legend, I think it was called, and very popular, sold a lot. He was then commissioned by the publishers to do a sequel. And he said, I sat down and I wrote the first line of the sequel, the first chapter of the sequel. He said, and I knew it was a different book. He said, it's one of the characters' name was so-so, rode to the top of the ridge and looked over and beheld Jerusalem. He said, that wasn't the book I was going to write.
Do you find books, oh sorry, you had a question, didn't you?
Has any of you ever had a character that literally took life and went his own way or her way and did it that way, irrespective of what your wishes were?
Endlessly.
Yeah. And that's great.
Yeah.
That's the point at which you know the character has actually taken on a life of its own, when they won't do what you tell them to. When I talk to kids in schools about writing, I always make that point that you as the godlike author, you can't force the characters to do, if you do, then they're not characters, they're just bits of scraps of paper. The point at which you try and get somebody, it's like trying somebody to murder somebody in a book and you can't find a way of making it work. Well, that's because their character would not be a murderer.
Yeah. But one important thing to do is to interrogate the character and find out why they're misbehaving, to see whether they've got better ideas than you have, or if there is actually something essentially wrong with the plot or another character, which is, in terms of physics, pulling them out of orbit. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I had a character who had to be captured, was captured, and was going to be captured later on, and started to become very resourceful in escaping. And he dragged a table into the middle of the room, which is just typing it, he dragged the table into the middle of the room. Okay, carry on. About 2 pages later on, when the baddie came and saw the table was there and the roof was there, thought he'd escaped through the roof, so they went and helped with that hidden down door. That was I was just reading it. It was complete news to me. Fantastic.
Wonderful when it works like that.
Yeah.
I do actually find it very useful in all 4 of my Star Dancer books about the Iron Age and the Romans. I've been to almost every site in the book. 1 or 2 it was impossible to get to. When my character goes to the top of Cair Idris, there was actually a hugely thick fog, and it wasn't actually safe to go right to the very top. But almost every step my character took, I have been where they went. And it really, really opens up your writing, because you're standing in the middle of a wood where you know the Romans might be attacking any minute, but if you're actually in situ, you suddenly realise, oh, there's a big stone over there, or there's a crack and a cave, and things that you don't know when you stand in the real place suddenly move the plot on, because you discover things about it that you hadn't imagined. And if it's a fantasy world, very much the same thing. If you can draw it or use photographs or something to make it very real, then you discover the door you can hide behind, or the creaky floorboard, or whatever. So making the setting as real, or visiting a similar place, is vitally important.
But also, I think there's a life experience part as well. I'm doing, for the past couple of years, and probably for the next few years, I've been doing a big binge read of adventure writers from the 50s, 60s and 70s. So Alistair MacLean, Desmond Bagley, Duncan Kyle, Hammond Innes, Geoffrey Household, and really, really enjoying it, partly because they've got a simplicity of approach that we don't get these days. A lot of writers these days overcomplicate things. They were very direct. But also, if Hammond Innes writes about a guy on a trawler in a Force 9 storm, you're pretty sure he's been there, he's done that. He was in the Merchant Navy, he knows what it's like.
And
Whereas
it
most-
shows.
And it shows. And most of these, I mean, you read James Patterson, or whoever's writing James Patterson books these days, they have not done what they are talking about. There's a lovely story about Christopher Lee in some film he was making where they had to pretend to break somebody's, you know the story, don't you? Pretend to break somebody's neck. They were discussing what kind of sound it would make. Oh, yes, it makes kind of loud, snappy sound. And then he said, no, I think you'll find it's a rather dry crack. Because he was in Special Forces in the Second World War.
How to stab somebody.
Yes.
I used to teach, as I say, creative writing to teenagers, and it was at an adventure centre in Somerset. And they'd got, as part of their grounds, woodland. And they roped off a passage through the woods. And it had obstacle courses on it. And they'd blindfold the kids and take them through this obstacle course. What I used to do was get a couple of assistants, put one at one end, one at the other, and another in the middle. And then these teenagers, I'd take them out in the dark, turn the torches off, and I'd send the first one, and they could either make up a scenario or I'd give them a scenario. Usually they've been working, this is 200 years ago, there's no torches, no lights, they've been working, and they've got to get from where they've been working to their home, going through this wood alone at night. And I'd send them off. The rule was they had to stay between these roads, and as I say, there was an adult, an adult, an adult. And then every minute I'd send off another one, so they were safely alone in the woods, in the dark. Because these kids were writing stories about walking through the woods alone in the dark, but they'd never done it.
They're still looking for 3 of the kids.
I told you not to mention that.
Some is one of them.
Oh.
But it does remind me of this film director. I was running a writing group, we met in the pub, the film director came along, and this new guy had turned up, who must have been in his early 20s, and he was saying, how do I write a script, and that sort of question. And this film director turned to the young chap, I'll try and do it as well as I can, and he said, how old are you? And this young chap said, I'm 20. And the film director said, I don't believe anybody can write anything until they're over 25. So, Beth, what have you got? And he turned his back on his kid. And I laughed out loud because it was so outrageously rude.
Yeah,
But I don't think my reaction was helpful at all.
That kid may have had his own life experiences
Yeah.
at an early age that could be put into something.
And terribly
Well,
cool.
he'll certainly have a crushing rejection of a life experience of that.
So my favourite story along those lines, it's not writing. Robert Altman, who was a Hollywood film director, directed many great movies. I think he won a couple of Oscars, I can't be entirely sure. Later in his career, he was called in to the office of the production company to talk about his next film. And this 21-year-old executive sitting behind the desk said, so, Bob, yeah, tell me about yourself, what have you done? And Robert Altman looked at him and said, you first. It's one of the greatest put-downs ever.
Any other questions?
Well, what about AI then? Because obviously they're not going to do method. I mean, there is nothing that could.
There is a bloke who was planning this year to publish 10,000 novels in a year using AI. I sat down and worked that out. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. He would have to produce a book every 10 minutes. So he was going to be publishing books that he could not even have read himself.
And they also hire...
Isn't that true of Mills and Boon? Because apparently, at one time, when I did do a creative writing class, apparently I got told, get yourself employed by Mills and Boon, because apparently they turn them out so fast. And the story is totally the same from one to the other. But they say that you learn by that whether you can rate to die.
I did hear a story about the Mills and Boon editors. They took the first half of one book, one manuscript they liked, and the second half of another manuscript they liked, and just put them together and just changed the names. Apocryphal, but it may well be true. Yeah, AI. One of the things with AI is, especially certainly, works now, the AI systems have to be trained on real books. And so I think several 100,000 books have been scraped off of the internet that had already been scanned in and fed into these AIs. And a number of writers, including quite a few serious American writers like Stephen King and so on, and down the ranks somewhere, me, have signed a letter calling, well, basically saying this is breaking our copyright. Good. And that the companies are saying, oh, well, it's all anonymised, it's all like sort of, it's all kind of mint stuff. Yeah. But actually, if they're using Stephen King's work as an example of how to write a book, they can't then say they're anonymising it and mincing it up. It's not.
What a writer I know in our group is using AI. He's using pseudo-write, which is a ChatGPT front end. Okay? And he popped into it because he wanted to write like Mark Dawson and Lee Child, because he's writing thrillers. Sensible thing to do. And you know, he's trundling away, creating paragraphs using this system. And the phone goes. And the main character answers the phone. At the other end is Jack Reacher. Jack Reacher is Lee Child's character. Now, that's a smoking gun for plagiarism, is it not? Yeah. And then you look at the previous paragraph and think, well, where's that being stolen from? To my mind, you can't trust any of it. I couldn't morally use it because I don't know where it's been stolen from. My colleague is going to have to put it through a plagiarism check. But
also, they're hiring human people to read these AI books and check them.
But I've used it because I'm interested in AI and science fiction and so forth. So I had a go, and it quickly becomes repetitive.
Yes. It will not surprise you. No AI book will ever surprise you by a twist or a turn, unless it surprises you by something blatantly stupid occurring, which the AI will have no idea whether it's stupid or not.
It's not at the heart, is it? It's or the reaction that you could put into something that makes people feel when they read it.
Or by stealing something from a book you haven't read yet.
Yes. I mean, at the crude level, I mentioned I'm reading a lot of 50s, 60s, 70s novels at the moment. Obviously, there are no mobile phones. If those books have been digitised, scanned in, pulled in anonymously into the AI, there may come a point in the plot that the AI generates the book where somebody's in a situation where you think, well, just use your mobile phone to get out of it. But they haven't got a mobile phone because the AI doesn't know that a book set these days should have mobile phones. It's scraping everything up.
Have you, if you're traditionally published, that's right, like today in this case, but it won't, because you won't have a contract. But have you got anti-AI scrape clauses in contracts now? Because the contract that I'm about to sign, when I put the contract through the Society of Authors contract check, they said, put this paragraph in for AI, and I went back to the publisher and said, can we have this paragraph inserted? And it was the first time that publisher had been asked to insert.
I have not seen that in a contract yet,
Thank you.
but I can imagine it will be coming up.
Yeah.
What I did find, I did a short story for an American anthology, probably 20, 25 years ago now, and the contract that I got from them said that they were buying the rights to the story in all currently existing formats and all formats yet to be invented. It was the first time I'd ever seen that clause, but you keep seeing that clause nowadays. And I know the BBC have just tripped up on that because they're uploading the whole of Doctor Who to iPlayer. But of course, streaming didn't exist when the contracts with the original actors and writers were writing. So everything's not got to be renegotiated for the new format.
Well, we're not seeing the first story at the moment.
Well, because Anthony Coben's son is...
Amazon has just created a little box you have to tick saying whether there's AI content. Whether it's AI generated, AI assisted, or there's no AI.
I don't know much about AI, but surely if these books have been trained on Stephen King and Mills and Boon and Shakespeare, it's going to be a god-awful mess of a writing style.
I'd read that.
Also, one of the reasons I write is because it's a kind of semiotic thing. There's me reading the book, and then there's the book that's created by the writer, and I'm accessing something about the writer through the book.
Yeah.
If I'm reading Howard Innes, it's very different from Alistair MacLean. That's very different from Stephen King. Whereas AI books, unless you specifically say, I want this in the style of so-and-so, are going to be just generic. And you don't, there's no right on the other side that you can...
There's no voice to
No.
it.
In fact, you and I were talking about playing in the bar last night, weren't
Yes.
you? Do you want to say anything about it?
Oh, because it's complimentary to you.
Yes,
Of course.
yes, it is.
No, we were talking yesterday. I read Andy's
I've got a trawl for compliments.
I read Andy's short stories and I could recognise his voice. I can hear his voice when I'm reading it. And that's the thing when I was doing MA in creative writing. It's the most important thing for writers to generate their own voice.
But you don't know how to do that.
Well,
Nobody does.
They also then don't tell you how to do it. Well, I'm trying to supposed to be teaching you this. So yeah, but I think morally there's another issue, in that we are human beings and communicating with each other is part of being human. So part of me writing is not just that a reader gets enjoyment. I get a lot out of the process, which is part of me being human to say what I want to say. And whether AI can do that, even if it could do it better,
But
we're missing the point. It's
if
about
you-
humans communicating with humans.
If you move it out of the literary genre into something like, let's say, music, I have several albums, that's an old-fashioned word. I have several albums which are procedurally generated. There's a set of algorithms have been put together to generate, it's electronic music. And Jean-Michel Jarre did one, it's called procedural music. And it's terrible. You would not want to listen to it because there's no emotional content behind it.
I find when I read any one of your stories, I hear you telling me the story.
Good.
And that goes, Terry Pratchett did it for me. And I usually find if I'm reading something and I'm hearing the right voice, I'm going to enjoy that book more. And that's why I keep coming here, because I'm meeting authors. And hearing your voices telling you the story enhances the whole procedure for me. Like the Dare and Do Club. I love that.
Well, thank you very much.
I really do. And it, because I can hear you telling me the story, it's so special to me. And I go back to these stories. When I'm having a really rotten day, I go back to the things I know.
Yeah.
And they're your story.
Thank you.
I love that you go back to our stories, but I don't want you to have a rotten day to do it.
No.
A rotten day to read it, yeah.
It gives me that comfort that I know the voice, I know the story, I always laugh at Sussex, Essex. Yeah, always. It's there for me. It's a warm feeling. I'm enjoying the book, you're there with me, you're telling me the story, I'm not alone.
Do you listen to audiobooks?
Oh yeah. And I like the voices on there too. But a lot of the time I'm listening to Terry Pratchett, for example, and I'm not hearing the voice, I'm hearing Terry telling me the story.
I have noticed that I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and the Rivers of London series.
Ben Aronovich.
Yeah, but it's read by Cobner Holbrook Smith. And if I listen to anything that's not read by Cobner, it just doesn't sit right anymore.
Yes.
Interesting enough, I've listened to some of the audiobooks by Terry Pratchett, and ironically, it's the other way around. I don't hear Terry. It's like I close my eyes and all I can hear are the actual characters. As if somebody was doing a proper TV show.
Yeah.
I was very lucky when I did my Stardance book. Macmillan let me do the first two audiobooks of book 1 and book 2. I've often wondered about doing book 3 and book 4. I might. Audiobooks are great fun.
Something I want to do.
Very time consuming. My wife, who many of you will know, has done a number of audiobooks for other writers. And I just watch the amount of effort she puts into it, because you've got to read it and then you've got to go back and listen to it, and you've got to take out all these little ums and ahs and things, the breaths you don't realise you're taking. And you've got to check the pronunciation of all the difficult words. You can't just open the book and read it. There's a lot of work that goes on before and afterwards.
you were at Sam here last year, and he described the process that he goes through, because he's dyslexic, or slightly dyslexic as well. And
Yes, that's
it's got Sam Burns, yeah.
yes,
So
it's
he
like
did a speech.
it's like putting a barrier in your own way, isn't it?
Yeah, it opened your eyes about what they have to do to do that sort of thing. You don't, when you're listening to it, you don't realise what work they're going into.
It's very much, when you've got something like that, it's very much like Morecambe and Wise. All the right notes, just not in the right order.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say though, but it does depend on who's doing the audiobook and how conscientious they are, because there are some totally terrible big publisher
And
audio
again, I'm talking about X.
Yeah.
I followed Darren Shan, who's a children's horror writer, and he posted recently, I think he's doing quite a lot of self-published stuff as well, and he posted recently, oh yes, I'm just about to do the audiobook for this particular series that I've written, and I'm going to be using AI to do it. AI voices, reading out. No.
That's a dangerous path to start tootling down.
Yeah.
Karen Travis, the science fiction author.
Star Wars.
Yeah, she's done Star Wars and Heavy Gear and
Halo as well, I
and
think.
also, but she does her own books. So I'm on her mailing list, and she sent us all a chapter, a sample chapter of one of her novels that was read by an AI to say, I'm saying nothing. What do you guys think? And and it was an actor had read all the individual words in that they read the dictionary, and the AI assembles the sentences from what the actor has said, and it cannot do inflection at the end of questions. It cannot do, and it's got this weird stuff that goes, Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, reading her cards and way.
Turns into a Dalek.
It just doesn't work.
I'm now imagining a future world where AIs are writing books that AIs are then reading out for AIs to listen to. The human race then becomes completely irrelevant.
Yeah, we're all
They transcribe them.
Yes, we all fed back going, yeah, this is terrible, and she said back, yeah, I thought it was pretty terrible. But you're saying it's the cost, because she'd love to have an actual actor, but the price difference.
Oh, and that goes back to what I was saying about the sheer amount of effort that an actor has to put into
And
reading
then the editing and the mastering.
Sorry, question from...
My understanding is, doing an audiobook, somebody's really good at it and got proper practice. It's 3 hours of effort to get 1 hour's material.
Yeah.
At least. And that's when you've got good at it.
So, good question for everyone. Should books be read out by their own authors or by an actor? I mean, it goes back to the voice.
I think it depends. For me, autobiographies should always be read by the people that... It entirely depends on the type of book. If it's a sci-fi or a romance or a whatever, then maybe an actor would be better because they can put different inflections. But an autobiography, I'm listening to Sir Patrick Stewart's.
Oh, right, okay.
And it's like, yeah, no, I can't. And I've listened to a couple of Brian Blessed's. I can't imagine anybody...
Do you have to turn the volume down?
Tell you, Neil, I can still hear him.
I can't imagine anybody else reading Brian Blessed's autobiography other than
without being Brian Blessed.
Yeah.
I think a lot depends on who the person is. I mean, I've done a lot of audio work, a lot of radio work, all the rest of it. But I had a poem read on Radio 4 once, and I was dreading it because I wasn't quite sure how to read it right. But the actor who read it far better than I could ever have done. She was superb.
Right. Yeah, Tracy's done by the Bella. Fantastic. Just,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're almost at the end. One more question.
I'd just like to point out that Dave got Dawn to do some of his reading because you wanted a female voice for it.
Yeah. It adds a bit of variety, and I can't do accents, so...
Well, apart from your natural.
Well, yes, whatever this is, I can do this one.
Any more? Right. Please give a round of applause for our brilliant writer.